In today's video, I want to talk about a function I came across in Oracle to compare row data. So basically expressions, because I had a need, and I'll describe. I'll go into detail in a second what the task was. But I've done this before in SQL Server with a function called binary checksum, and I just had the question, "Hey, I haven't, I've been using Oracle for a long time, but I haven't actually tried to do this. I've always kind of written uh, a very complicated where clause or expansive where clause to compare all the column data. And so I wondered, hey, is there an easier way to do this? And I came across something called standard hash. So let's take a look at what was done. So my task this week was to detect address changes over time. So typically what I'll do is if I have a table that I think that I'm going to need to do some analysis over time in, I'll create what I call a time series version of the table. And what I'll do is I'll just create a simple job that snaps that table's data and stores it to a table, and I'll slap basically a timestamp on it or a date on the end of it, and just store that over time, and then just put it away. I've done this before with like equity stock data. So if I have like a entity in my data model that stores like stock information about like a stock symbol or something like that. So if I want to like be able to track the change of a symbol over time or a QSIP or something like that, it's very handy. So I'll just create this simple job and I'll create a time series table and I'll just snap it every day. And then it sort of never fails. Someone usually comes to me 6 months or a year later and says, hey, we want to look at the changes of this stuff over time. And then I'll pull out the time series table and we'll do some analysis. So that's what I had at my disposal here. I have this table that was called clients, and there was address data in it. We wanted to detect changes in any of the address fields over time. So we had stuff like, a couple of street columns, a city, a state, a zip code, a county, a country. And we're trying to see if any of these columns changed over time and detect that and basically version them. So like I said, I've done this in SQL Server. Hey, but what about Oracle? What is there? What is there? And I did a little searching and came up with this function called standard hash. So here's the syntax. You basically call the function and you give it an expression, and you can actually append on like the algorithm that's being used to hash the data. So the default is SHA-1, but you could also use SHA-256, 384, 512, or MD5. So you have the choices. I just started using it with the SHA-1 just to play around with it. And you could just pass it in here. And this expression, what I found out is they could actually be different data types. So I could have a string and I can append a date. It doesn't really care. And it seems to be working. So I found that interesting and useful as well. So let's look at an example. So like I said, I've got this table, clients time series, and what I'm trying to do is over time, I want to look at changes in the street number, and I have like an apartment number, which is the second component of the address, a city, a zip, county, state, country. And I've also got like an insert date in there that tells me, hey, this is when this row is inserted. And then, but that doesn't necessarily correspond to the snap date. So I might have a row that, the insert state's going to stay over time. So I'm not going to have any changes in that from one day to the next because basically that row was only inserted once. But I've got the time series date that says when I snap the data. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing in the fields I want to compare: street number, apartment number, city, zip code, county, state, country. And I'm calling that my row hash. And I'm using an analytic function here, lead, and then I call standard hash. So basically what I could do is look at the next version of the row or the next day over the time series and then compare them. So I've got my row hash, and I'm passing the same columns in, and I'm doing the next row in the time series, and I can compare them then. So this CTE that I'm building here is giving me a result set that has the standard hash from, let's say, day one, and then the standard hash from the day 2 on the same row. And then what I can do is compare the row hash with the next row hash. And if they're different, that is the situation that I want to pay attention to, because that tells me every row where it changed from one day to the next. And that's how I'm accomplishing this with this standard hash in the analytic function. So very useful. And this is something that I've been using Oracle, I think, for 25 years, and I had just something I hadn't come across yet, and I thought it was interesting. I put together a video for you guys. That's it for today's video. I really appreciate you guys watching. If you learned something in the video, please like, consider subscribing, drop your comments below. And of course, if you have questions, drop those below as well. And if I feel like I can add some value, I'll create a video for you. Thanks, guys. Bye.